Good evening. This is Finding Help with Special Needs. Lola Aneke. So, welcome. It's 4 o'clock already here. Yes, a few minutes past 4. And we will be talking about everything special needs today. I've tagged today's topic as I'm sorry, I can't remember. So, usually when we begin, I always like to talk about I always like to recap what we talked about last week. So first and foremost, I'm very excited to be back live. I know for the past 2 weeks, I've done recorded videos regarding the subject matter of each of the days, but I'm super excited to be back on live today. So please join me, share this video, and let everyone come on board to come learn about special needs. So last week we talked about where is my shadow, and I tried to define what the meaning of shadow is. And shadow simply means to follow and observe someone closely and secretly. So that's what I saw the definition to be. And we talked about the different ways of supporting children with special needs and how the shadows or it could be referred to the person that follows that child closely or secretly could be referred to as a shadow. Sometimes the word facilitator is used, sometimes therapist is used, but above all, whatever we're doing, we must have the child's interest at heart, and the ultimate goal will be that we want to move that child towards independence so that the child does not keep depending on us perpetually. So today, we'll be talking about I'm sorry, I can't remember. Thank you, Nana, for joining in. You're so sweet. Thank you. So we're talking about I'm sorry, I can't remember. I would, yes, I'll be using, like I always say, good evening, Nana. Thank you. So I'll be using several examples like I always use, stories from my past or from my line of duty. The first story I'll be talking about today will be when I was still very young and I had no idea what special needs or disability is all about. And then I'll teach my sister probably division or addition. And then because it involves several, I always wondered, and then I sit with her right now and I'm like, so 2 plus 2 plus 4. So that will be 8. And I'm like, oh, the next minute I ask her, what's the answer? She's like, she can't remember. And I'm like, excuse me, I just taught you this is not difficult. 2 plus 2, you should know that's 4. And I wouldn't be patient. I remember I would hit her, I would be so angry at her. She would cry and then won't be able to learn anything for that day. And I also remember back in school, we had some of our classmates then that a word to be said to them at this time, and then just for them to remember that this word is Mississippi, for example. That's a long word, but let me just say this is a cat, and then the person will not just remember how it's being pronounced. And I'm like, oh really? And I remember back in school then they were simply called Olodo. And then there are also the ones, thank you, Miss Kayla, for joining in, Miss Queen, all the way from Canada. Yeah, Miss Kayla from Canada, Miss Queen from Paris. Yeah. Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you. I'm so excited that you all want to know what disabilities are going through and how best you can help them. So back to our topic. I'm sorry I can't remember. This simply means we're talking about memory, ability to remember, which is memory. So I gave an example of where you teach someone something just now. So for example, I pick up this slip and say, this is pink. And then the person can't just remember what I just said. Or I give a task to a child and say, go to the next room on your left. When you get inside, you see a brown desk. There are 2 layers. the lower drawer, open it, and bring me the red pencil. And the child goes into the room and brings me a paper. And I'm wondering, can't you just remember these simple steps? What's the problem? And naturally, we just say the child is forgetful or the child is too playful. Sometimes the word lazy is being used. It's just lazy. How can he forget to turn in his assignment? How can he forget to not to make his appointments? Those are very important things. How could he forget? It's just unserious. The truth is that we need to understand how our works. So one of the things I'm always so thankful to God when people ask me questions, how I'm able to work with children with special needs. What they say to me, you must really be patient. And I tell them my story from graduate school, where one of the things the first thing we learned in the first semester was how the brain works and how the brain of children with special needs works differently from how the brain of children without special needs or children without disability works. And so when it comes to issue of memory, there are two kinds of memory. We have the long-term memory and the short-term memory. So the short-term memory stores information, it takes in information that can be used easily. So for example, if I teach a child multiplication table and I say 2 times 2 is 4, if I ask him immediately, he's going to bring it out to me, and that's where the short memory does. But when I now say 2 times 2 times 3 plus 2, that involves longer strategy, longer information. So that information, and then for that child to be able to give me the answer to that sum or to that task, it will need more strategy to be able to do that. And that you need to understand the way to go about it. So if I say 2 times 2 is 4 plus 2, that will be 6 minus 3, that will be 3. So what's going on right now is that there are some steps involved. It's either I write it down to show the steps, or because of the way my brain is and is advanced, I can actually easily take it in and store it in my long-term memory, so that next time I'm giving such task, I'll be able to bring it out the way I was able to solve it. So if, like the example I gave just now, 2 plus 2 plus 3 minus 2. So 2 plus 2 will give you 4, plus 3 will give you 7, minus 2 will give you 5. Those are step-by-step ways of there's a strategy to use that. Now, for a child, that might be, or for an individual with learning disability, that might be a long demand or a huge demand on that individual. So he would have to adopt a strategy to remember that task that's been given. So that strategy is what he stores in his long-term memory, so that when he needs it, he can always adopt that strategy to be able to give me the answer. Now, another good example is driving. So for example, if you're just a learner and you're learning to drive, you have to learn to I'm trying to remember when I learned to drive years back, and then I used the manual, so then you put your leg on the clutch and then you kick, and then you put in your gear 1, and then you move and all of that. For me, for a lot of new learners in driving, that's a big task. But with time, so the first time you're like, okay, what do I do first? I put my leg on the clutch. What's the next first thing to do? And then I store those steps in my long-term memory, so that when I need it, I can easily produce it and begin to drive. Now, it's also possible another good example would be maybe learning to play the piano or the keyboard, where so for everybody, we can all sing do re mi fa sol la ti do, nothing less of fa mi re do. That's a strategy. I would go into that with time. That's a strategy for remembering. So that could do re mi fa sol la ti do could actually be in our short-term memory. But if I now asked to sing Mary Had a Little Lamb and play Mary, you will need to have a longer strategy or an advanced strategy to be able to play Mary Had a Little Lamb or Old MacDonald at the farm, or any other um, tune or rhyme. So the way it goes is that the immediate use of whatever you've learned that does not require you to use any strategy is what you store in your short-term memory, and it doesn't stay long there. You need when you need it, it comes out immediately. So it's like used almost immediately. But for you to be able to use it over and over again, it has to be stored. That means those information is important, and it has to be stored in your long-term memory so that you can always recall it when you need it. But we have children who we see them as smart, really. And then the truth is that children with learning disabilities or dyslexia are not dumb. People always say, but the child is so smart. How come he can't remember to lay his bed? How come he can't remember to do his homework? How come he can't remember to turn in his homework even after doing it? How come he can't remember that today is sports and he wouldn't take his sports wear? So those are some categories of students that we see that they have issue with memory. Some children is just ability to remember simple addition, simple subtraction. Some also even their home address. So we know that disability could be severe, mild, or moderate. So we have different kind of memory challenges that the children could have. And some children actually have challenges with even the short-term memory. So you say something to them right now, they can't remember it. So we need to identify where the memory issue is. Is it in the long-term challenge or the short-term memory challenge? So once we identify that, we can now know how to help this in. So for parents who feel, oh, my child is super brilliant, but it's just little things he forgets. So we need to know what are those things. So when the topic was put out yesterday, someone said to me, oh, so I have this child who forgets things. So he forgets some things and remember something. So that's a good one. So he forgets he can remember music. So you play music, Davido, for example, he remember all the lines, but you ask him to remember his schoolwork, he doesn't remember it. And I just laugh because if you understand how the brain works and how the short memory store information and the long-term memory store information, we would easily be able to identify what's going on with that child and how to provide help for the child. So today, I'll be talking to us about how we can help children depending on the need of that child. So if it's a short-term memory issue, you know what to do. If it's a long-term memory issue, you also know what to do. So let's go back to, I wish I had, okay, so Miss Kayla, she was the one that asked that question. She says, I have a question based on chores. Does forgetting to do chores have anything to do with learning disability, especially a child that has dysgraphia? Okay, these are two different things. So learning disability, yeah, dysgraphia is part of learning disability. So when you say forgetting to do chores, for me, I think that is wide. So when you say a child forget to do things, and that's where special needs, I have to go deep into what the practice of special needs is, and that has to do with data. We have to have your fact. How frequent does this child forget to do the chores? When you say chores, what kind of chore are you talking about? Are you saying washing plates? Are you saying laying of bed? What exactly are you talking about? I would like to hear that. But let me just try and explain what might be going on. I can't be really sure. So as I have a data that says, oh, when it's time to wash plates, he tend to forget washing plate, or when it's time to lay his bed. I need to be sure exactly what it is. I have my data. How often does this happen? When does it happen? And all of that. But I think what might be going on with that child is washing of plates. Remember that there are strategies to washing plates. So for a child who has learning disability, yeah, it means there's an inner the style, the child is learning how to learn. So he might not know the strategies to be able to help himself. So washing plate might look easy to any typical person. Just get your sponge, put some water, on the foam of the sponge, pour a little liquid washer or whatever it is you're using to wash, turn on the tap, put the plate under water, scrub the inner part, the outer part, rinse, put it to dry, and then clean. Those steps that you think is easy might be tough for that child. So that child might really not be forgetting to wash the plates. It might be that he cannot remember the steps to washing the plates and do it, so that he will not feel like a failure washing the plate, and then you are seeing that the child is lazy or the child is getting to wash plate. So identifying what's happening and being able to help that child would be the next step. And that's what I always say to people when it comes to issue of disability. It's not enough to say this child is living with autism or ADHD or dyslexia or dysgraphia. What next? How can I help this child so that the child can do that? Yeah, so data is very important for us in every way. Thank you, Nana, for saying that. She said, great to mention data, because I immediately was thinking about it from a behavioral point of view. So the data will help us understand what's going on. If you actually insist that the child, you want to see what the child is doing. So could it be that he didn't remember that he had to open the tap or whatever it's going on with? Data gives us information, help us to see the holistic view of what is going on. I can now know how to provide the help. So just the way data helps us to provide in ABA, helps us to provide function, help us to help to provide functional behavior analysis or the next step for the child. That is same thing data does for whatever you're going on. A lot of questions coming in today. I'm really excited about. Thank you, Dr. Tomi. See Lola for joining in. Miss Kayla says, thank you, Pastor Joe. Thank you, Antonia, for joining in. Happiness, I see you. Thank you. So Kayla says, house just making bed, picking plates and putting it away, leaves his clothes lying on the ground, happens often on a daily basis. This child is a teenager. Yes, it could be what's going on. So what we see as normal, washing plate is normal to any typical person. Arranging their, so also the issue of executive functioning could also be what to do next. I think I'm going to talk about executive function maybe next week or upper week, but it's another thing we need to look at. There's something called executive function, the ability to reason and do things the way it's ought to be done, doesn't come easy for some children living with disabilities. So for that child, making bed and so is a big deal. Order for that child is a, so the child is not being lazy. It could be that he has not understood the fact that when I take off my clothes, the dirty ones goes into this basket or the laundry basket. Ones goes into my wardrobe or it needs to be folded. It might need the strategy to be able to understand that. It might need to be taught the way to go about it. It might need time. It could be a processing issue for the child. It might need time to understand what's going on, and then it might need you to put him through those tasks. I hear people say, well, I've taught him before. How are you teaching this child? We need to do it. I mean, we call it something like routine. You need to do it over and over and over again. And when you're doing that, you need to check how the child learns. What works for this child might not work for another child. So this might be the issue with that child. So I don't think it's good enough for us to say that the child is lazy. If you have your fact and your data together, we'll be able to analyze what's going on with that child and then be able to help the child. And let's not forget that there are ways these children learn. Children with this learning disability have ways which they learn. So, yeah, it's okay. Kayla is also asking the question: is there a duration of teaching this child? For what is what? Because it doesn't make him, yeah, is responsible enough. If a disability, it can be. Let's not forget that most of these are lifelong disabilities. So we can't say that there's a cure for disability. So we could just simply say, okay, so answer your question to duration. You could tell yourself, I'm going to teach this child this particular task within the next 1 week. But then you have to now decide how you want to teach it and how the child learns better, which I'm going to go into as I explain how to help children with such issues. So if, for example, let me give a good example. A child, you've been teaching this child how to lace his shoes. You know, lacing is like, so children with autism have that issue, children with dyslexia, learning disability have this issue. So you're wondering what's so difficult in knotting, just crisscross, and then you turn it over and then it's done. We all have our learning styles. These children have what they're dealing with. It's very good for you to understand. Okay, so Miss Nana is saying you should book a session with me. So I would keep it at that, but I'm going to talk about the different ways the children learn. So you need to plan your strategy. You need to plan your so to say lesson. You have to have a plan in place. I'll do this first, I'll do this second, I'll do this third, and then you have to have your progress monitoring. How do you monitor if the child is getting, what is going on? Could it be that the child is not in the mood? All of those are things you need to know, and how to sort out the issue with the child before you now determine, before you now give up and say, look, this child is not learning at all. So these children have several things they're going through in our classroom. So it's school. The child would say, well, I've been teaching this child ABC over, excuse me, water, please, over and over again, and it doesn't seem to get it. Or it's just to forget. If I just taught this thing right now, he's not remembering it. Like I said, it could be a short-term memory issue. It could also be a long-term memory issue. Like I'm saying again, data will be able to help you know what is going on. So if you say the child could not remember simple addition, 1 plus 1, we'll write that down. What could it be? Is it a long-term memory thing? When did you teach it? Oh, I just taught it now and I can't remember. So that would be a short-term memory challenge for that child. Also, I thought we're trying to do so in science, for example, chemistry, and you're trying to teach the child. So you've taught all the elements in isolation. Hydrogen is H, oxygen is O, and all of that. And then you're trying to teach the child water, combination of H2 will give you water. If, for example, you taught hydrogen in isolation on Monday, and then you taught oxygen in isolation on Tuesday, a child with long-term memory issue might find it difficult to put H2O together on Friday. So you have to bring it back again. So that kind of child, you say, is having issue with long-term memory. Okay, I gave a good example of how we learn to drive. So with time, before you know it, those step-by-step strategy for learning for driving comes to you naturally. So you use every day. You don't have to always recall it again. It becomes like a norm for you. So it's just permanently in your short-term memory. You're always using it. What other good example? Okay, so that's how you can tell if it's a short-term memory issue or a long-term memory issue. So you need to be able to take data to know what's going on. You need to be able to, so for parents who say, my child doesn't matter to do his homework. So you want to ask yourself, what's going on there? Does the homework come every day, or it has certain days? So if it's on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, it might be a long-term memory issue for the child, because every day might be easier than him saying, look, I have to store it where it's an important information for him. So if, for example, he stores that he can't remember it, that might be a long-term memory challenge for that child. So the easiest way to know is that if it's a long-term memory issue or a short-term memory issue would be that if it's something that he does every day, so that you need every day, you just taught it to the child or you just said it to the child. So I'll give an example. So if, for example, I send my daughter who is 5-year-old to go to the kitchen and get me sugar, gari, and milk, and she goes and get me sugar and comes back, for me that will be a short-term memory, because I just said it now to her and she couldn't remember. She got something, she got the sugar, so that's the one she kept in her short-term memory. But if she goes and she got gari and milk and brought salt in place of sugar, then it's possible that she stored it in her long-term memory, but she missed something. So she got more of the things I've asked her to bring. Or if she goes there and come back to me without anything, it could be a short-term memory issue. So it depends on what's going on, but taking data of what's going on will be able to help us understand if it's a long-term memory issue for the child or a short-term memory issue for that child. And it's also possible to help the child. I'm going to tell you different strategies to help, be it in the home front at home or even in school. So one of the ways, excuse me. One of the ways to help a child with memory issue or teacher that keeps forgetting is to use what we call mnemonics. And I'll put it myself as an example too. So there are some words that are very long. So for example, Mississippi. If you're teaching syllable, me, CCPs, 4 syllable words, and a child has dyslexia, maybe issue with syllable segmentation or blending of words, you could use a song. I remember my dad be like, well, I remember the first time he asked me to spell Mississippi. I'm like, oh, I can't remember. Like MISSI. And I said no. And he sang the song MISSISSIPI. That's an example of mnemonics where you use songs to be able to remember the songs. It comes like that. It's easy for that child to retrieve what's going on and what you want him to learn. Another good example of mnemonics is so the A B C D E F G H I J K. So it's already there in your, even like by saying A B C D E F G, it's easy for that child to remember than, oh, where did I store it there? Good for us to use mnemonics to teach our children in the classroom. We could also use, so another good example of mnemonic is, so for me, what I do, so if I meet someone for the first time and which I'm sure it happens to most of us. So if you say your name is Kemi and I'm meeting you for the first time, what I do is I try to place your face with another Kemi I know so that it comes back to me. So these are good ways of helping children with memory. So the truth is that what's happening to them is that as opposed to individuals who do not who do not have any form of disability, or who is not living with dyslexia or any form of learning disability, we have strategies that we've developed ourselves to help to self-regulate ourselves. But for these children, they do not have the strategy, so we have to and help them to use the strategies. So on Facebook, I see that my connection is poor. I think it's raining here in Abuja, so bear with me. But I can see we're still on Instagram. So it's you use mnemonics to help the children. Another good example is the rabbit, how the child. So there's this, if you Google the bunny rabbit's way of rabbit rhyme for teaching a child how to lace. Can you hear the rain? Ooh, heavy rainfall here in Abuja. So the bunny rabbit's rhyme for teaching a child to lace a shoe. So if you Google that, you see that it's like a song. So in, and then you loop it and all of that, and then the child is able to do that. So as opposed to us saying, oh, the child has this issue, the child is not listening, the child forgets. What are we doing to help that child to remember? I'm trying to get the bunny rabbit song out now, but simply just Google it and then you'll find that out. Yes, so if you're online on Facebook, please say hello to me, say hi, and let me know that you are with me. Send me heart. Thank you. So I just see that my connection is rolling here on Facebook. Excuse me. So you could use that. Another thing you could use would be to use go. We say Mr. For remembering characteristics of living things, we go Mr. Niger. I'm not sure they say death because they say, okay, if it's a living thing, shouldn't die. So Mr. Niger, M is for movement, reproduction, nutrition, and all of that. So you use the first, thank you. That means you can all see me on Facebook. I wonder why my connection keeps rolling. So you use beginning of those beginning words. So you can actually, so if you're teaching a child, okay, so like for example, even rainbow, the colors of the rainbow, we use be red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, and violet. So those are examples of not mnemonics, acronyms that you could use for the child to remember. You could also, for example, for mnemonics, you could use songs. So if you know that your child likes songs, so the parents will say, oh, he can sing all the song, but he doesn't remember to lay his bed. When you find out that for the child, challenge is laying the bed. Why is he not laying the bed? Could it be that he doesn't know he had to pull off the bed sheet, dust out the dust, lay it, tuck it in. So you could just write out those steps and probably sing a song about it, and the child will remember. You could actually use mnemonics, you could use acronyms for the child to remember. And then another thing you could do is to teach it slowly. So let's use the washing of plate, for example. You could say the first thing you do, it could take you a whole day, not a whole day, but for per se, you say, okay, the next 10 minutes, okay, throughout Tuesday, throughout Monday, I'm going to be showing you how to pour liquid soap on the sponge or on the foam that you're using. And that's all you do for that day. The next day you change it, add something else. So when you pour liquid soap on the chain, on the sponge, then you pour water, and then the next day you go back to the sponge with liquid soap with water, and then the scrubbing of the plate. And then by Thursday you go to back to liquid soap with sponge, liquid soap on the sponge, pouring of water, scrubbing, and then rinsing. So depending on how you pace your lesson. When I say lesson, the task, everything is a lesson. You need to teach it, and then the way you teach it matters on how the child retain and remember what you're talking about. Now, you could also use pictures. You could use different ways to explain the same thing to the child. So, for example, you're trying to teach the child two-letter words, and the child is not getting it, and he can't seem to get it. You could play the music, you could play the nursery rhyme of A and then the child sees it, the child listens to it, he watched it, you use a card to show the child that if the child touches it, all of those help the child to remember. You could also decide to model to the child, or you could have the child teach you what he has learned. So if you say, let me teach you. So I teach ABC. Yeah, so breaking down the task really works. That's what I'm trying to say. So I teach ABCD. The child could